Remarkable to think about this. Hard to believe. It has been a decade since one of the top 5 deadliest hurricanes and the costliest hit the U.S., made landfall in Louisiana. At 6:10 a.m. on August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina stormed on shore just south of New Orleans with winds of 125 miles per hour and a wall of water nearly 3 stories high.
It was that wall of water that did all the damage, Bob. Over 1,800 souls lost their lives during the hurricane and the flooding which came after it. And for everyone who lived through the hurricane, it changed their lives. Their lives would never be the same after that, Bob. My life would never be the same. You're going to hear many stories on this anniversary weekend about Katrina. Here's mine.
Saturday, August 27th, 2005. I was working as the morning meteorologist at WWL-TV, the CBS station in New Orleans, Louisiana.
It's a big storm, Eric. It's getting bigger. You can't just think of it as one center point. You have to look at the entire wind field, the entire storm itself. It's going to have large impacts no matter where it makes landfall.
Before arriving at work, I woke up that morning to a sick feeling in my stomach. Hurricane Katrina was churning in the Gulf of Mexico, and it was looking more and more like a direct hit for the city. I quickly headed to work, ready to stay on the job for days. My wife Jennifer would stay behind with friends for her baby shower scheduled for that afternoon. You see, Jennifer was 9 months pregnant with our first child.
A monster Category 3 storm and possibly taking aim at southeast Louisiana. Hurricane Katrina continues to move west in the Gulf of Mexico. The big question is, where will the storm make landfall? When will it turn north? John Gum is in the Weather Center. Let's get right to this, John. Any new information for us?
My coverage of the storm began just before 10 a.m. I would sit in that chair for the next 12 hours, warning people to get out as Hurricane Katrina inched closer to the city.
And again, we're not trying to frighten people, but this is one that we are, quite frankly, very frightened of.
We're concerned. I mean, we have a lot of concerns with this storm, Eric. And
just before 10 p.m., in the midst of our coverage, my office phone rang. It was Jennifer telling me she was going into labor and heading to the hospital.
And now we want to go straight to the Weather Center, where John Gum joins us with some new information about Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at a lot of information here on the internet.
I stayed long enough to give one last update on the storm and then headed off to be there for the birth of our child. Hours passed as we watched a small TV in the hospital room, my colleague showing a worst-case track for the city.
You're getting very close right now. How do you feel, Mommy?
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure?
Connor Jacob Gum was born at 3:20 a.m. on August 28, 2005, just over 24 hours before Katrina would hit. For a short time, the hurricane didn't exist to us. Just 16 hours later, with the hurricane bearing down on the hospital, my newly expanded family and I would become part of one of the largest evacuations in U.S. history. On the road, I changed my first diaper in the back of an SUV at a gas station in Laurel, Mississippi. We finally made it to my sister-in-law's house in Tennessee the next morning. I had been up for 40 hours straight. A couple of weeks later, we'd head back to our home to assess the damage.
You can see there is a large hole in the house, in the roof of the house, and basically large damage to the entire roof structure that's basically making this house uninhabitable and unsafe to live in.
We were lucky. We lost a little furniture but escaped relatively unscathed. Most of the people I worked with at that station lost everything and continued to work through the storm, earning a Peabody Award for their excellent coverage.
And I've got to give a lot of props to the people that I worked with down there in New Orleans. They never left the air once during that entire storm. They had a great plan. And also a guy named Brad Panovich, a meteorologist from Akron, Ohio, an Ohio State grad. He came in, flew in basically to provide us help and ended up taking my place, allowing me to go with my wife and to get her and Connor out of there.
No, it gives me goosebumps, and it did earlier when we told this story, to hear you talk about going through that with your family, and you talked about how difficult it was for you to go back and look at all that footage, but also some of the difficulty you had in realizing what happened to you from that moment going forward, because you had so many positive things come out of that.
I did. I mean, it turned out great for me, the hurricane. I ended up coming here to Local 12, got my dream job here in my hometown. For a lot of folks down in New Orleans, they couldn't do what I do. They could not get in the car and leave. They didn't have cars. They didn't have any means of transportation to get out of the city. For many folks, they had never left the city of New Orleans in their entire lives. So they had no choice
And there
but to stay.
and there were
try to
well
go through it.
documented cases of people who tried to leave and they were barred. I
Right.
mean, they essentially,
Right.
there were big roadblocks for them trying to get out. So.
Yeah,
And
it
even
was a
though
difficult
they've done a
time.
great job with the rebuilding, there's still a lot of people who don't have jobs there.
Yeah, the lower Ninth Ward,
Yeah.
in many parts of it, still in shambles there. They've rebuilt the levees, the flood walls. They've changed the protection system, the hurricane protection system, to make it more robust than ever. Still not completely safe, though.
Yeah.
That could still happen again with a major
Well,
hurricane.
you
Right,
can't
you
protect
think about
against
it.
Katrina.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do so when you have a wall of water 3 stories high coming into the
Can't
city.
even
There.
imagine. Thank you, John.
I know it was hard. Thank you, John. Very
We've
much.
got another tropical system that we're dealing with out there. This one, nothing like Katrina at all. It's Tropical Storm Erica, 50-mile-an-hour winds. Kind of disorganized now. The official track for this thing continues to